I've been living with Avery for 2 years now, and somewhere along the way, our practical roommate arrangement became the most important part of my day. It started innocently enough. We were college friends who needed to split rent after graduation, nothing more complicated than shared groceries and divided utility bills. But now, as I sit cross-legged on our worn couch watching her make tea in the kitchen, I can't ignore how my heart speeds up when she laughs at something on her phone, or how I find myself timing my evenings around hers. Drop a comment if you've ever felt that instant spark with someone unexpected, because I'm starting to realize that what I thought was just comfortable friendship might be something I've been too scared to name. The apartment feels different in the evenings when we're both home. Avery has this way of moving through our shared space that makes it feel alive. She'll hum while washing dishes, leave her books scattered across the coffee table, curl up in the corner of the couch with her legs tucked under her like she belongs there. And maybe that's the problem. She does belong there. More than that, I've started to feel like I belong wherever she is. 3 months ago, I broke up with Ethan. On paper, it should have been devastating. We'd been together for over a year, talked about moving in together, even looked at rings once when we were both tipsy and feeling sentimental. But when I finally ended things, sitting in his car outside a restaurant where we'd shared what I knew would be our last dinner, all I felt was relief. Not heartbreak, not loss, just this overwhelming sense that I was finally free to come home to something that actually mattered. "You seem happier," Avery had said that night, finding me in the kitchen when I got back. She was wearing her favorite oversized sweater, the green one that brings out her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun that somehow made her look both vulnerable and beautiful. "I know breakups are supposed to be sad, but you look lighter." I'd wanted to tell her that I felt lighter because I was finally admitting to myself that the best part of my day was walking through our front door and seeing her shoes by the entrance, knowing she was home. Instead, I just smiled and said something about how sometimes endings are actually beginnings. That was 3 months ago, and since then, our evening routine has become sacred to me. We'll make dinner together, or more accurately, I'll cook while she sits on the counter and tells me about her day, stealing tastes of whatever I'm making and making faces when it's too hot. Then we'll settle onto the couch with our plates and she'll scroll through streaming services while I pretend to read, but actually watch her face in the blue light of the TV. The dangerous part is what happens after dinner. We'll pick something to watch, usually something we've both seen before so we can talk through it, and somehow we always end up gravitating toward each other. It starts innocently. She'll stretch her legs across the couch. I'll adjust to give her more room. But by the end of whatever we're watching, she's usually curled against my side, her head on my shoulder, and I'm running my fingers through her hair without really thinking about it. Last week, she fell asleep like that during a movie, and I spent an hour just listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of her against me and trying to memorize the moment. When she woke up, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes and smiled, and I had to excuse myself to the bathroom because my heart was beating so hard I was sure she could hear it. The thing is, I don't think I'm imagining the way she looks at me sometimes. There are these moments when I'm cooking and she's watching me from the counter, or when we're both reaching for the same book and our hands brush, or when she's telling me about something that happened at work and she gets animated and leans closer, where I catch something in her expression that makes me wonder if she's feeling this too. But then I remember that Avery has always been affectionate. She's the kind of person who hugs hello and goodbye, who links arms when we walk, who thinks nothing of sharing clothes or falling asleep on friends' couches. Maybe what feels electric to me is just Tuesday to her. The uncertainty is killing me, but the alternative, risking what we have by admitting how I feel, seems impossible. What if I'm wrong? What if I tell her that somewhere between shared midnight snacks and lazy Sunday mornings, I've fallen completely in love with her, and she looks at me like I've lost my mind? What if she moves out? What if she can't even look at me anymore? So I've been living in this strange limbo, cherishing every casual touch and shared glance while trying to convince myself that this is enough. That being her friend and roommate is enough. That having her in my life in any capacity is better than risking losing her entirely. But my lease is up for renewal next month, and I've been thinking, maybe I need some space to figure out what I'm feeling. Maybe I need to step back from these evening routines and movie nights and the way she makes coffee for both of us every morning without asking. Maybe I need to remember what it feels like to come home to an empty apartment, to miss someone instead of just being grateful they're always there. I've been looking at studio apartments across town, nothing serious, just browsing listings and imagining what it would be like to have my own space again. To not have to hide how I feel every time she smiles at me. To not have to pretend that the highlight of my day isn't watching her get ready for work in the morning, humming while she braids her hair. The thought of leaving makes my chest tight, but staying feels impossible too. How long can I keep pretending that what I feel for her is just friendship? How long can I keep lying to myself about why I ended things with Ethan, why I've turned down every date my friends have tried to set up, why the only person I want to come home to is the one person I can't have? Tonight, she's making tea and I'm watching her move around our kitchen like she owns it, like she's always belonged here, and I'm trying to work up the courage to tell her about the apartment listings. Not because I want to leave, but because I need to know if the thought of me leaving affects her the way it's been affecting me. The lease renewal papers are sitting on my desk and signed, while I try to figure out if I'm brave enough to stay or if I need to be brave enough to go. The lease renewal notice had been sitting on our kitchen counter for 3 days, its bright yellow header seeming to mock me every time I walked past. I'd been putting off the conversation, but as Avery hummed softly while making her evening tea, I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. So I said, trying to keep my voice casual as I leaned against the counter, "I've been thinking about the lease situation." Avery looked up from her steaming mug, her dark eyes curious. "Oh, right, it's coming up soon, isn't it?" I completely forgot to think about it. She smiled that easy smile that made my chest tighten. Good thing one of us is responsible. I forced myself to meet her gaze, even though looking at her directly always felt like staring into sunlight. Actually, I've been looking at some studio apartments across town, just to see what's out there. The words hung in the air between us, and I watched as Avery's expression shifted from casual interest to something I couldn't quite read. Her hand stilled on her mug, and for a moment, the only sound was the gentle hiss of her tea cooling. "Studio apartments," she repeated slowly, as if testing the words. "You mean, you're thinking about moving out?" There was something in her voice that made my stomach drop, a tremor of uncertainty that I'd never heard before. Avery was always so composed, so sure of herself. But now she looked almost fragile, standing there in her oversized sweater with her hair falling loose around her shoulders. "I mean, maybe," I said, immediately regretting how flippant I sounded. "It's just, we've been living together for 2 years. I thought maybe it was time to try living alone, you know? For independence." Even as I said it, I knew how weak the excuse sounded. Independence. As if I hadn't been more dependent on Avery's presence than I'd ever been on anyone else's. As if the thought of coming home to an empty apartment didn't make me feel hollow inside. Avery set her mug down with trembling hands, and I watched her face crumble in real time. It was like watching a dam break. All the composure I'd grown so used to seeing from her just disappeared. "Hannah," she whispered, and her voice was so small, so broken, that I instinctively stepped closer. "You're my safe place. I don't know what I'd do without you here." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd expected maybe some disappointment, perhaps a practical discussion about finding a new roommate. I hadn't expected this raw vulnerability that made my heart race and my hands shake. "Avery," I started, but she was already shaking her head, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. "I know that probably sounds pathetic," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "But coming home to you every day, having our quiet evenings together, knowing you're just down the hall, it's the only thing that makes sense in my life right now." She reached out then, her fingers wrapping around my forearm with a desperation that made my breath catch. Her touch was warm and soft, but there was something urgent about it, as if she was trying to anchor herself to me. "I've been feeling so lost lately," she admitted, her thumb unconsciously stroking across my skin. "Like I'm searching for something I can't even name. But when I'm with you, when we're curled up on the couch watching terrible movies or making breakfast on Sunday mornings, I feel like myself. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." I stared down at her hand on my arm, at the way her fingers seemed to fit perfectly against my skin. The contact was sending electricity through my entire body, and I had to fight the urge to cover her hand with mine, to pull her closer, to tell her that she was exactly what I'd been searching for too. "You don't understand," I said quietly, though I wasn't sure if I was talking to her or to myself. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" The question came out as barely more than a whisper, but there was something in her tone that made me look up, made me meet her eyes directly. What I saw there made my heart stop. There was pain, yes, but there was something else too, something that looked almost like hope. Her eyes were searching my face with an intensity that made me feel exposed, like she was trying to read all the secrets I'd been hiding. Because I started, then stopped, because how could I explain that I was running away from the very thing she was describing? How could I tell her that every quiet evening, every casual touch, every moment of feeling like we fit together perfectly was slowly destroying me because I wanted so much more? Because what? She pressed, and her grip on my arm tightened slightly. "Hannah, talk to me. We tell each other everything." The irony of that statement almost made me laugh. Everything except the most important thing. Everything except the fact that I was in love with her, that I had been for months. That breaking up with Ethan had been the easiest decision I'd ever made, because being with him had felt like lying to myself when what I really wanted was standing right in front of me. "I just think maybe some space would be good," I said weakly, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew I didn't mean them. The last thing I wanted was space from Avery. What I wanted was to close the distance between us entirely, to stop pretending that what we had was just friendship. Avery's face fell, and a tear finally spilled over, tracking down her cheek. "Space from me." The hurt in her voice was unbearable. Without thinking, I reached up and brushed the tear away with my thumb, my hand lingering against her cheek. Her skin was so soft, so warm, and the way she leaned into my touch made something inside my chest crack open. "Not from you," I whispered, and suddenly we were standing so close I could count her eyelashes, could feel her breath against my lips. "Never from you." Something shifted in the air between us then, something electric and terrifying and inevitable. Avery's eyes dropped to my mouth for just a moment before meeting mine again, and I saw my own confusion and longing reflected back at me. "Then why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why would you want to leave?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. How could I explain that I was leaving because staying was too dangerous, too tempting, too likely to end with me ruining the most important relationship in my life? How could I tell her that every day I stayed was another day I fell deeper in love with her, another day I had to pretend that my feelings were purely platonic? Instead, I just stood there, my hand still cupping her cheek, both of us breathing too fast and staring at each other like we were seeing something new, something that had always been there but had never been acknowledged. "Hannah," she whispered, and there was something in the way she said my name that made my knees weak. I think I've been lying to myself about something." The admission hung between us, heavy with possibility and terror. I could feel us balanced on the edge of something that would change everything, and I wasn't sure if I was brave enough to take the leap or if I should run while I still could. But as I looked into Avery's eyes, saw the same fear and hope and desperate longing that I'd been carrying for months, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one who had been hiding something after all. The weeks that followed felt like living in a house of cards, where every breath might bring everything tumbling down. Hannah found herself making excuses, telling herself she was just being practical, that finding a new apartment in their city's brutal rental market would take time anyway. But the truth was, every time she opened her laptop to browse listings, Avery's words echoed in her mind. "You're my safe place, Hannah." The apartment search became a charade Hannah performed for herself, clicking through photos of sterile studios while her heart pulled her back to their shared kitchen, their comfortable couch, the way Avery's laugh filled their living room. She'd bookmark a few places, schedule a viewing or two, but something always came up. Work ran late. The weather was terrible. The landlord seemed sketchy. Each excuse felt thinner than the last, but Hannah clung to them like lifelines. Their daily routines continued, but everything felt different now, charged with an electricity that made Hannah's skin tingle whenever Avery was near. It started with small things, the way Avery would brush past her in the narrow hallway between their bedrooms, her fingers trailing along Hannah's arm for just a moment longer than necessary. Or how Avery had begun seeking her out after particularly stressful days at work, appearing in Hannah's doorway with tired eyes and asking if she could just sit with her for a while. "Rough day?" Hannah would ask, and Avery would nod, settling onto Hannah's bed with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. These moments became a ritual, Avery curling up against Hannah's side while Hannah worked on her laptop or read, neither of them speaking much, but both finding comfort in the simple presence of the other. Hannah began to notice things she'd somehow missed before, or perhaps had trained herself not to see. The way Avery's breathing would slow and deepen when she rested her head against Hannah's shoulder, how her body seemed to melt into the contact as if she'd been holding herself rigid all day until this moment of release. Sometimes Avery would fall asleep like this, and Hannah would find herself studying her face, the soft curve of her cheek, the way her eyelashes cast shadows in the lamplight, the peaceful expression that replaced the tension she carried through her waking hours. During one of these quiet evenings, Hannah realized with startling clarity that her breathing had synchronized with Avery's, their chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. The intimacy of it made her heart race, and she had to resist the urge to stroke Avery's hair, to press a kiss to the top of her head. Instead, she sat very still, memorizing the weight of Avery's body against hers, the scent of her shampoo, the trust implicit in the way she'd allowed herself to be so vulnerable. "I feel like I'm searching for something," Avery murmured one evening, her voice soft and drowsy. "But I don't know what it is." Hannah's hand stilled on her laptop keyboard. "What do you mean?" "I don't know." Avery shifted slightly, turning her face toward Hannah's neck. "I've always felt like there was something missing, you know? Like I was waiting for something to click into place, but I could never figure out what." The words sent a shiver through Hannah's body. She wanted to ask more, to push gently at the edges of what Avery was saying, but she was afraid of what she might discover or what she might reveal about herself in the process. "Maybe you'll figure it out," Hannah said instead, her voice carefully neutral. "Maybe?" Avery's breath was warm against Hannah's collarbone. "It's just, I've never felt as settled as I do here. With you. Like maybe I've been looking in all the wrong places." Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. She stared at her laptop screen without seeing it, acutely aware of every point where Avery's body touched hers. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and unspoken meaning. Their movie nights became exercises in restraint. Avery would curl up next to Hannah on the couch, gradually migrating closer until she was practically in Hannah's lap, her head on Hannah's shoulder and her legs tucked up underneath her. Hannah would focus intently on the screen, trying to ignore the way Avery's fingers played absently with the hem of her shirt, or how Avery would sometimes turn to look at her during funny scenes, her eyes bright with laughter and something else Hannah didn't dare name. "You're not watching," Avery accused one night, catching Hannah staring at her instead of the romantic comedy they'd chosen. "I am watching," Hannah protested, but her cheeks burned with embarrassment at being caught. "You're watching me," Avery said, and there was something in her tone that made Hannah's breath catch. Not accusation, but something softer, more wondering. "The movie's not that interesting," Hannah said, attempting lightness, but hearing the roughness in her own voice. Avery studied her face for a long moment, and Hannah felt exposed, as if Avery could see straight through to all the feelings she'd been trying so hard to hide. Then Avery smiled, a small, secret thing that made Hannah's stomach flip. "I don't mind," Avery said quietly, and settled back against Hannah's shoulder, but not before Hannah caught the flush that had crept up her neck. The apartment viewings Hannah forced herself to attend became increasingly perfunctory. She'd stand in empty rooms, nodding politely as landlords pointed out features she wasn't really seeing, her mind always elsewhere. Back home, where Avery would be waiting with takeout from their favorite Thai place, or curled up on the couch with a book, looking up with that smile that made Hannah's chest tight with longing. "How was the apartment?" Avery would ask, and Hannah would shrug, giving vague responses about square footage and lease terms, while what she really wanted to say was that nowhere else felt like home, that home had become synonymous with Avery's presence, with the life they'd built together in their small, cluttered space. The turning point came on a Thursday evening when Hannah returned from a particularly depressing studio viewing to find Avery sitting at their kitchen table, surrounded by work papers but not looking at any of them. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked up at Hannah with an expression so lost and vulnerable that Hannah immediately crossed to her. "Hey, what's wrong?" Hannah asked, crouching beside Avery's chair. "I don't know," Avery said, her voice thick. I keep thinking about you leaving, and I feel like I'm falling apart. It's stupid, I know. People move out all the time. But I can't stop thinking about coming home to an empty apartment, about not having you here to talk to, about losing this." She gestured vaguely at the space between them. Hannah felt something crack open in her chest. "Avery, I know it's selfish," Avery continued, tears starting to fall. "I know you need your own space, and I should be happy for you, but I'm not. I'm terrified, and I don't understand why it feels like my whole world is about to end just because my roommate is moving out." The word roommate hung between them like a challenge, and Hannah realized they were both dancing around the same impossible truth. That what they had transcended friendship, transcended any normal living arrangement, but neither of them had been brave enough to name it. Hannah reached out, covering Avery's hand with her own. "It's not selfish," she said softly. "And you're not losing me." Avery looked at their joined hands, then back up at Hannah's face. "Aren't I?" The question held everything they'd been avoiding, and Hannah felt the weight of it settle between them. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, and she could either step back into the safety of pretense or leap forward into the unknown territory of truth. "I don't know," Hannah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what any of this means." But even as she said it, she was beginning to understand that they were both searching for the same thing, and maybe, just maybe, they'd been looking in the wrong places when what they needed was right here, in the space between them. In the careful way they'd been building something neither of them had dared to name. The days blurred together after that conversation, each one heavy with unspoken words and stolen glances. Hannah found herself making excuses to stay home more often, canceling plans with other friends just to spend quiet evenings with Avery. She told herself she was being a good roommate, but the truth sat heavier in her chest with each passing day. She was falling deeper in love with someone who might never feel the same way. Avery seemed different too, more clingy in a way that made Hannah's heart race and ache simultaneously. She'd find reasons to touch Hannah's arm during conversations, to lean against her while they watched television, to seek out her presence whenever she felt overwhelmed. Hannah treasured these moments while simultaneously feeling guilty about how much she craved them. 3 weeks had passed since Hannah had first mentioned the apartment search, and she hadn't looked at a single listing. Every time she opened her laptop with the intention of browsing rental sites, she'd find herself distracted by the sound of Avery's laughter from the kitchen, or the way sunlight caught in her hair as she read by the window. The lease renewal deadline was approaching, and Hannah knew she couldn't avoid the decision much longer. It was a Thursday evening when everything finally came to a head. Hannah had spent the day at work trying to focus on spreadsheets and client calls, but her mind kept drifting to the conversation she knew she needed to have. She'd made a decision during her lunch break. She was going to tell Avery that she needed to move out, not because she wanted to, but because staying was becoming too painful. Living with someone she loved but couldn't have was slowly tearing her apart. She found Avery in the kitchen, standing at the stove stirring something that smelled like tomatoes and herbs. The domestic scene made Hannah's chest tighten with longing. This was what she wanted, not just the friendship, but the quiet intimacy of sharing a life with someone who felt like home. "That smells amazing," Hannah said, setting her bag down on the counter. She kept her voice light, trying to hide the weight of what she was about to say. Avery turned with a smile that faltered slightly when she saw Hannah's expression. "Just pasta sauce. I thought we could have a quiet night in." She paused, studying Hannah's face. "You look like you have something on your mind." Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd rehearsed this conversation during the entire drive home, but now that the moment was here, the words felt impossible to speak. "I do, actually. We should probably talk." The wooden spoon in Avery's hand stilled. "That sounds ominous." It's not ominous, exactly. It's just. Hannah ran her hands through her hair, trying to find the right words. I've been thinking about the apartment situation again. Avery's face went pale. She set the spoon down with shaking hands and turned to face Hannah fully. I thought we'd moved past that. You said you were going to stay. I said I was thinking about it, Hannah corrected gently. But I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks, and I think it might be better if I find my own place after all. Better for who? Avery's voice was barely above a whisper. Hannah felt her resolve wavering at the pain in Avery's eyes. For both of us, I think. We're getting too comfortable, too dependent on each other. It's not healthy. Not healthy. Avery's voice cracked. Hannah, you're the best thing in my life. How is that not healthy? The words hit Hannah like a physical blow. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance between them, to tell Avery that she felt the same way. Instead, she forced herself to stay where she was. Because I can't give you what you need, Avery. And staying here, pretending that what we have is enough, it's killing me. Avery stared at her for a long moment, and Hannah watched as understanding dawned in her eyes. What we have? Hannah, what are you talking about? Hannah felt tears building behind her eyes. She'd said too much, revealed too much. Nothing. I'm just saying that maybe we both need some space to figure out what we want from our lives. I know what I want, Avery said, her voice stronger now. I want you here. I want our movie nights and our Sunday morning coffee and the way you make me feel like I'm not completely lost in this world. She took a step closer. Hannah, you said I was your safe place, but don't you understand? You're mine too. You're the only person who makes me feel like I can be myself. Hannah's carefully constructed walls began to crumble. Avery, you don't understand what you're saying. Don't I? Avery moved closer still, close enough that Hannah could see the tears gathering in her eyes. I've been trying to figure out why nothing in my life has ever felt right, why every relationship I've tried to build has felt like I was playing a role. And then you mention leaving, and suddenly I can't breathe because the thought of losing you is the most terrifying thing I've ever faced. Hannah's breath caught. Avery. I've been lying to myself, Avery continued, her voice breaking. About what I want, about what I need, about what I feel when I look at you. I've been so scared of losing you that I convinced myself friendship was enough, but it's not. It's not enough, Hannah. The kitchen fell silent except for the gentle bubbling of the forgotten pasta sauce. Hannah felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that one more step would change everything forever. You don't know what you're saying, Hannah whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I do know, Avery said, reaching out to touch Hannah's hand. I know that when you broke up with Ethan, I felt relieved in a way that scared me. I know that I've been finding excuses to touch you, to be close to you, because it's the only time I feel completely at peace. I know that the thought of you leaving makes me want to fall apart because I finally understand what I've been searching for all this time. Hannah stared down at their joined hands, feeling the last of her defenses crumble. Avery, if we do this, if we cross this line, we can't go back. Our friendship, our living situation, everything changes. Maybe everything needs to change, Avery said softly. Maybe we've been holding on to something that was never meant to stay the same. Hannah looked up to meet Avery's eyes, seeing her own feelings reflected there, the fear, the longing, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, they could have something real together. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, Avery whispered. But I'm more scared of letting you walk away without telling you the truth. I'm in love with you, Hannah. I think I have been for months, but I was too afraid to admit it, even to myself. The words hung between them like a bridge, waiting for Hannah to decide whether to cross it. She thought about all the reasons she should step back, should maintain this safe distance of friendship. But then she looked at Avery's face, saw the vulnerability and courage it had taken to speak those words, and realized that safety had never been what she really wanted. I love you too, Hannah said, her voice barely audible. I've been in love with you for so long that I forgot what it felt like to not love you. Avery's face crumpled with relief and joy. Really? Really, Hannah confirmed, squeezing Avery's hand. That's why I need to move out. Because living with you and pretending I don't feel this way is torture. What if you didn't have to pretend? Avery asked, stepping closer until they were almost touching. What if we stopped hiding from this and saw where it leads? Hannah felt her heart racing as she studied Avery's face, seeing the same desperate hope she felt reflected in her eyes. Are you sure? Because once we do this, once we take this step, there's no going back to the way things were. I don't want to go back, Avery said firmly. I want to go forward with you and see what we can build together. Hannah felt tears streaming down her face as she realized that everything she'd been afraid to want was standing right in front of her, asking for the same thing. Okay, she whispered. Okay, yes. Let's try. Avery's smile was radiant as she pulled Hannah into her arms, holding her tight as they both cried with relief and joy and the overwhelming realization that they were finally home. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of Avery's confession. Hannah could feel her heart hammering against her ribs as she held Avery close, acutely aware of every place their bodies touched, Avery's shoulder pressed against her chest, the warmth of her breath against Hannah's neck. The way Avery's fingers clutched at the fabric of her sweater, like she was afraid Hannah might disappear. Avery, Hannah whispered, her voice barely audible. She pulled back just enough to see Avery's face, noting the tear tracks on her cheeks, the vulnerability in her eyes that made Hannah's chest ache with tenderness. Look at me. Avery lifted her gaze, and Hannah felt something shift in the air between them. The pretense was gone now, stripped away by Avery's raw honesty. They were no longer just roommates, no longer just friends dancing around something neither wanted to name. They were two women who had just admitted they were terrified of losing each other, and Hannah could see in Avery's eyes the same recognition that was blooming in her own chest. I've been so scared, Avery said, her voice thick with emotion. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that what I felt when I was with you was just friendship. But when you said you were looking at apartments, I realized I couldn't pretend anymore. I can't lose you, Hannah. I can't lose this. Hannah's breath caught. She reached up slowly, giving Avery time to pull away if she wanted to, and gently cupped Avery's face in her hands. Her thumbs traced the path of Avery's tears, wiping them away with infinite care. You're not going to lose me, she said softly. I'm right here. Something flickered in Avery's eyes, hope, maybe, or recognition. Hannah, she whispered, and there was something different in the way she said Hannah's name now, like it carried more weight than it had before. I think I know what I've been searching for. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Hannah felt her pulse quicken as Avery's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. The space between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. What? Hannah asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. She needed to hear it, needed Avery to say it out loud. You, Avery breathed. It's you. It's always been you. Hannah felt something crack open in her chest, a warmth flooding through her that had nothing to do with the heat of their shared apartment. She had imagined this moment so many times, lying awake at night wondering what it would feel like to hear those words from Avery's lips. The reality was overwhelming, better, and more terrifying than anything she had conjured in her imagination. Avery, she said, her voice catching on the name. I need you to know, if we do this, if we cross this line, everything changes. We can't go back to just being roommates who watch movies together. Avery's eyes searched Hannah's face, and Hannah saw the moment when understanding dawned. I don't want to go back, Avery said, her voice steady despite the tears still clinging to her lashes. I've been trying to go back for months, trying to pretend I didn't feel this way about you. But I do, Hannah. I'm in love with you. The words hit Hannah like a physical force. She had hoped, had wondered, had allowed herself to imagine, but hearing it said out loud was different. It was real, concrete, undeniable. I'm in love with you too, she whispered back, and saying it felt like exhaling after holding her breath for years. Avery's eyes widened, as if she hadn't quite believed it until she heard Hannah say it. Really? Really, Hannah confirmed, and she saw the exact moment when joy began to replace the fear in Avery's expression. God, Avery, I've been in love with you for so long. I broke up with Ethan because being with him felt like lying to myself. Every time I came home to you, every time we curled up together on the couch, I kept thinking this is what love is supposed to feel like. This ease, this comfort, this feeling like I can be completely myself. Avery's hands came up to cover Hannah's where they still cupped her face. I felt it too, she said. I just didn't know what it was. I've never felt this way about anyone before, man or woman. You make me feel safe and excited and terrified all at the same time. Hannah felt her heart swell with tenderness. She could see the uncertainty in Avery's eyes, the fear of the unknown mixing with the joy of finally naming what had been growing between them. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, she said gently. We just have to decide if we want to try. I want to try, Avery said immediately. I want to try so badly it scares me. Hannah smiled, feeling tears prick at her own eyes now. Me too. They stayed like that for a moment, foreheads almost touching, breathing the same air. Hannah could feel the tension shifting between them, the desperate fear giving way to something warmer, more hopeful. She was acutely aware of every detail, the way Avery's breath hitched slightly, the warmth of her skin under Hannah's palms, the way her eyes kept flicking down to Hannah's lips. Hannah, Avery whispered, and there was a question in her voice, a request. Hannah's answer was to lean forward slowly, giving Avery every opportunity to change her mind. But Avery didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her face up, and their lips met in a kiss that was soft and tentative and perfect. It was nothing like the kisses Hannah had shared with Ethan, nothing like any kiss she had ever experienced. This was gentle and searching, full of questions and promises. Avery's lips were warm and soft, and when she sighed against Hannah's mouth, Hannah felt something deep in her chest unfurl like a flower opening to sunlight. The kiss deepened gradually, naturally, as they both relaxed into it. Hannah's hands slid from Avery's face to her hair, fingers threading through the soft strands. Avery's arms came around Hannah's waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Hannah rested her forehead against Avery's. Wow, she breathed. Avery laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. Yeah. Wow. They stayed curled together on the couch, not talking, just holding each other and processing what had just happened. Hannah felt like she was floating, like she might dissolve from the sheer intensity of finally being able to touch Avery the way she had wanted to for so long. I can't believe we just did that, Avery said eventually, her voice full of wonder. Good can't believe or bad can't believe? Hannah asked, suddenly worried. Good, Avery said quickly. Definitely good. It's just, I've never kissed a woman before. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Hannah pressed a soft kiss to Avery's temple. How do you feel now? Avery was quiet for a long moment, considering. Like, I've been trying to fit into clothes that were the wrong size my whole life, and I just put on something that actually fits, she said finally. Like, I finally understand what all those love songs were talking about. Hannah's heart swelled with affection. I love you, she said, because now she could say it. Now it was real and acknowledged and mutual. I love you too, Avery replied, and Hannah thought she would never get tired of hearing those words. They kissed again, slower this time, less desperate and more exploratory. Hannah felt like she was memorizing the taste of Avery's lips, the way she made soft sounds when Hannah's tongue traced her lower lip, the way her hands fisted in Hannah's sweater like she was anchoring herself. When they separated again, Avery looked dazed. So what happens now? She asked. Hannah considered the question. Now we figure it out as we go, she said. There's no rule book for this, Avery. We just see what feels right. Avery nodded, then smiled, the first real smile Hannah had seen from her all evening. I'm scared, she admitted. But I'm also happier than I've been in a long time. Me too, Hannah said, pulling Avery closer. We'll figure it out together. The morning light filtered through the curtains differently somehow, casting everything in a golden hue that made Hannah wonder if the world had actually changed overnight, or if it was just her perception of it. She woke slowly, her body still humming with the memory of Avery's lips against hers, the way her roommate had whispered her name like a prayer. For a moment, Hannah lay still, afraid to move and break whatever spell had been cast between them. The apartment was quiet except for the soft sounds of Avery making coffee in the kitchen. Hannah could hear her humming, something she'd done countless mornings before, but now it seemed to carry a different melody, one that made Hannah's chest tighten with a mixture of joy and uncertainty. She pulled on her robe and padded toward the kitchen, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. Avery stood at the counter with her back turned, wearing an oversized sweater that slipped off one shoulder. Her hair was messy from sleep, and Hannah found herself studying the curve of her neck, remembering how it had felt to hold her face in her hands. When Avery turned and their eyes met, both women froze for a moment, as if neither was quite sure how to navigate this new territory. "Good morning," Avery said softly, her voice carrying a shy smile that Hannah had never heard before. She held out a mug of coffee, their fingers brushing as Hannah accepted it. The simple touch sent electricity up Hannah's arm, and she saw Avery's breath catch slightly. "Good morning," Hannah replied, searching Avery's face for any sign of regret or confusion. Instead, she found something that looked like wonder, mixed with the same uncertainty that was churning in her own stomach. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Avery admitted, then blushed at her own honesty. "I kept thinking about last night, about what you said." "About what we?" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, but Hannah understood. They moved to the living room, settling on opposite ends of the couch, a careful distance that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Hannah tucked her legs under her, cradling the warm mug between her hands. The space where they'd kissed just hours before seemed to pulse with memory. "I've been thinking about it too," Hannah said carefully. "About what it means. About us." She paused, watching Avery's face. "Do you regret it?" "No," Avery said immediately, then looked down at her coffee. "That's what scares me. I don't regret it at all, and I feel like I should. I feel like I should be more confused or worried or something. But all I keep thinking is that everything finally makes sense." Hannah felt something loosen in her chest. "What makes sense?" Avery set down her mug and turned to face Hannah fully. "Why I never felt complete with anyone else. Why I always felt like I was performing some version of myself that wasn't quite right. Why coming home to you always felt more real than any date I've ever been on." She paused, her voice growing softer. "Why I was so terrified of you leaving." The vulnerability in Avery's voice made Hannah want to reach for her, but she held back, sensing they both needed to navigate this conversation carefully. "I've been questioning everything about myself for months," Hannah admitted. "Ever since I broke up with Ethan. Maybe even before that. I kept telling myself it was just friendship, what I felt for you, but friends don't usually lie awake thinking about their roommate's laugh, or the way she looks when she's concentrating on a book." "You did that?" Avery asked, a small smile playing at her lips. All the time, Hannah confessed, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "I felt guilty about it, especially when I was still with Ethan. I knew it wasn't fair to him, having feelings for someone else." "Having feelings for you?" They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both processing the weight of these admissions. Hannah watched Avery's face, noting how the morning light caught the green flecks in her eyes, how her lips looked slightly swollen from their kisses the night before. "I don't know what I'm doing," Avery said quietly. "I've never felt this way about anyone before, let alone another woman. I don't know the rules, or how to be good at this, or what comes next." "I don't think anyone really knows what they're doing," Hannah replied gently. "But we don't have to figure it all out today. We can take it slow, see how it feels." Avery nodded, then surprised Hannah by scooting closer on the couch. "Can I tell you something that might sound crazy?" "Of course." "Last night, when you kissed me, it was like coming home to a place I didn't even know I was looking for. I've spent so long feeling like I was searching for something, and I never understood what it was until your lips touched mine." Avery's voice was barely above a whisper. "I think I've been in love with you for a long time without realizing it." Hannah's heart stuttered. "Avery." "I know it's a lot," Avery continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "And I know we're both scared, and I know this changes everything between us. But I can't pretend anymore that you're just my friend, or that what I feel for you is normal friendship. It's not. It's so much more than that." Hannah set down her coffee mug and moved closer until their knees were touching. "I love you too," she said simply. "I've been in love with you for months, maybe longer. I was just too afraid to admit it, even to myself." The confession hung between them like a bridge, and Hannah watched as Avery's eyes filled with tears, not sad tears, but the kind that came from overwhelming relief and joy. Without thinking, Hannah reached out and wiped away a tear that had escaped down Avery's cheek. "So, what do we do now?" Avery asked, leaning into Hannah's touch. "We figure it out together," Hannah said. "We take it one day at a time. We talk about what we want, what we need, what scares us. We're honest with each other, even when it's hard." Avery nodded, then surprised Hannah by taking her hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, and Hannah marveled at how right it felt, how perfectly their hands fit together. "I want to try," Avery said. "I want to try being with you, really being with you. I'm terrified, but I want to try." "Me too," Hannah replied, squeezing Avery's hand. "We can stay roommates while we figure out the rest. No pressure, no rushing. Just us, learning how to be together in this new way." Avery smiled then, the first truly radiant smile Hannah had seen from her in weeks. "I like the sound of that." As they sat there holding hands in the morning light, Hannah felt something shift in her chest, a settling, like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. The uncertainty was still there, the fear of the unknown, but underneath it all was a solid foundation of love and trust they'd built over 2 years of friendship. Whatever came next, they would face it together. A week later, Hannah officially takes her name off the apartment waiting list. She calls the property management company from the kitchen counter while Avery makes coffee, their morning routine now punctuated by soft touches and meaningful glances that still make Hannah's heart skip. When she hangs up, Avery looks at her with a mixture of relief and joy that makes Hannah feel like she's made the right choice for the first time in months. "So we're really doing this," Avery says, handing Hannah her favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that Avery always remembers to save for her. "Living together, being together. All of it." Hannah nods, accepting the coffee and letting their fingers brush deliberately. "Are you having second thoughts?" "No," Avery says immediately, then laughs at her own intensity. "I mean, I'm terrified half the time, but not because I don't want this. Because I want it so much it scares me." Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense to Hannah, who has spent the past week oscillating between moments of pure contentment and flashes of anxiety about how quickly their world has shifted. They've been careful with each other, taking things slowly, establishing boundaries that feel natural rather than forced. They still sleep in their own beds, still maintain their individual routines, but now there are stolen kisses in the hallway and hands that find each other during their evening walks. "I keep thinking about what you said," Hannah admits, settling onto the couch beside Avery. "About me being your safe place. I never thought of myself that way." Avery curls up against Hannah's side, a gesture that feels both familiar and entirely new now that they've acknowledged what it means. "You've always been that for me, even when I didn't understand why. When I was stressed about work, or feeling lost, or just having a bad day, being here with you made everything feel manageable. I thought everyone felt that way about their best friend." Hannah runs her fingers through Avery's hair, marveling at how natural the intimacy feels now that they've stopped fighting it. "I think I knew, somewhere deep down. That's why I was so scared to stay. I could feel myself falling for you, and I didn't want to ruin what we had. And now? Now I think maybe what we had was always leading to this. We were just too afraid to see it." They've spent hours talking through their feelings over the past week, establishing that their connection is genuine and worth exploring. Hannah has shared her realization that her relationship with Ethan felt hollow because she was already emotionally invested elsewhere. Avery has talked about her growing awareness that she's never felt truly seen by anyone the way she feels seen by Hannah, and how that recognition has helped her understand herself in ways she never expected. "I called my sister yesterday," Avery says quietly. "I told her about us." Hannah's hand stills in Avery's hair. They haven't talked about coming out to their families yet, though Hannah has been wondering when that conversation would arise. "How did that go?" "She said she's been waiting for me to figure it out for years. Apparently, I talked about you constantly, and she could tell I was in love with you before I could." Avery laughs, but there's vulnerability in her voice. "She said she's happy for me. That she can hear something different in my voice when I talk about you now, like I'm not hiding anymore." The words hit Hannah with unexpected force. She's been so focused on her own journey of self-discovery that she hasn't fully considered how visible their connection might have been to others. I'm proud of you for telling her. I want to tell people, Avery says, lifting her head to look at Hannah. Not everyone, not all at once, but the people who matter. I don't want to hide this. I don't want to hide us. Hannah feels something loosen in her chest, a knot of anxiety she didn't realize she was carrying. I don't want to hide either. I've been hiding from myself for so long that the idea of being open about loving you feels like freedom. They decide to stay roommates while slowly building their romantic relationship, setting gentle boundaries and taking things at a pace that feels natural. It's an arrangement that might seem complicated to others, but it makes perfect sense to them. They've already built a life together. Now they're simply allowing it to become what it was always meant to be. As evening approaches, they work together to prepare dinner, a simple pasta dish that they've made countless times before. But now Hannah finds herself watching Avery's hands as she chops vegetables, admiring the concentration on her face, feeling grateful for the domesticity of it all. When Avery catches her staring, she grins and steals a quick kiss, tasting of the wine they've been sharing. You know, Avery says, stirring the sauce, I used to imagine what it would be like to have someone who felt like home. I thought it would be this big, dramatic thing, love at first sight, overwhelming passion, all of that. I never imagined it would feel like this. Like what? Like the most natural thing in the world. Like something that was always true, just waiting for us to be ready to see it. Hannah moves behind Avery, wrapping her arms around her waist and resting her chin on her shoulder. I love you, she says simply, the words still new enough to feel precious. I love you too, Avery replies, leaning back into Hannah's embrace. And you can't leave now because I've found my home. Hannah kisses the side of Avery's neck softly, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo mixed with something new, the knowledge that this woman in her arms loves her back, completely and without reservation. I'm not going anywhere, she promises. We've both found exactly where we belong. As they finish cooking together, moving around each other with practiced ease, Hannah realizes that she's never felt more certain about anything in her life. They've both found their safe place, and it's with each other.